Singles only time. Paul Farahvar here. This episode features R.C. Smith, comedian based out of Florida, originally New York comic. Great guy, great comedian. He's all the comedians that are doing crowd work now that you see putting clips on there. That's all R.C. does at his shows, and he does it to a level that nobody else can. He's like a Don Rickles of today. Every show is different. I've opened for him. I've worked with him at shows. Hard to follow. Definitely going to say that. Not easy to follow him as a comedian. He's really funny. Check him out. You can see this episode on Zoom. If you're listening, you can go watch it on Zoom as well on my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/PaulFComedy. Come check out my shows at paulfcomedy.com. All the details on the shows. I'm basically in Chicago for July finally. I've been on the road for the last 4 or 5 months, basically. So I get to actually stay in Chicago and Chicago adjacent for the next few weeks. I'll be at Comedy Vault, Laugh Factory, Bannerman's in Bartlett, at Zanies as well. I'm doing my show at Stand-Ups Sit Down at the Laugh Factory July 17th and the 31st, Mondays. If you want to come to that show, just email me, pfarahvar@gmail.com. I've got a bunch of guest spots for that. That's at the Laugh Factory on Mondays. We interview comedians after their sets. Super fun. Greg Kennedy's on the shows. Later this month, I'll be at Sunshine Comedy Club in St. Pete's and at Comedy Zone in Charlotte with Paul Ollinger. 2 Pauls, 1 show, Sunday, July 23rd. So if you know people in St. Pete, Florida, or in Charlotte, North Carolina, send them to our shows. Then I'll be in Boston, Vegas, Columbus, Ohio, and Munster, Indiana in August. Anyway, check out our sponsors. Singles only listeners, Paul Farahvar here. Want to tell you about our friends over at Love Shop Toys. They are a sex shop toy. They're passionate about destigmatizing and normalizing sex and sex toys and the conversations around it. They've been around for 20 years and they believe that life is too short for bad sex. We agree here at Singles Only Podcast. We've teamed up with them, so if you go to their website, loveshoptoys.com/singles only, you get 20% off all regular priced items. And all orders over $69 are free. Nice. That's right. Free shipping on all orders over $69. Nice. And you get 20% off if you use our /singles only at loveshoptoys.com /singles only. That is, you get discreet shipping. You'll get it within 2 to 4 days across most of North America. Check them out, loveshoptoys.com, and use the /singles only to get 20% off. You're welcome. Hey, it's time for another edition of Singles Only Podcast. This is Paul Farahvar. Who did you think it was going to be? This episode is also done via Zoom. So if you're listening to it, you can actually watch it on my YouTube page at Paul F Comedy, youtube.com /Paul F Comedy. If you want to see our pretty faces and our great hair. This comedian is a good friend of mine. We met during COVID times when everyone else was shut down. He, like many others, went where there were no restrictions and we can work freely with all the might possible and all the COVID all around us. Comedian R.C. Smith. Hey, buddy.
That was very professional, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I like to do that just to make me feel like it's like a real talk show. I haven't done these by Zoom in a while, but I was like, you know what? Every time I'm in Florida and we're in Florida, we're both working, and it's like we never get it, and so I was like, fuck it, let's just get it in the books before it's too late.
I agree. So, and this is a good time. I have a gig tonight, but 3:00 is the perfect time, so it's perfect.
Good. Well, don't tell them what time it is. You just gave it away. God damn it!
I didn't realize we were time sensitive.
No, it's fine. So, RC, first of all, we've worked together, and I've seen you in work, and I think I'm wearing an Off the Hook shirt. I think we met there, or shortly after we met at Snappers, or one of those clubs.
No, we met at Off the Hook down in Naples.
Yeah,
and they threw us together on. I think we both showed up, and either both of us were emceeing or both of us were featuring or something like that.
And then
they said, "Oh, what the heck? Both of you could be on the show."
Right, which has happened there to me many a times. Actually,
It happens every single time I show up.
Yeah.
Every time they call me, they say, "Oh, we need you. You're going to be headlining, whatever. We need you." It's a last minute call, and I go down, and there's like 8 guys that got the same phone call.
So funny.
Yeah, so we each do 2 minutes, and then get paid our $10 and go home.
Yeah, it's so funny. I've had that happen to me. I'm like, I don't even. It's not about the money, but it's like I don't want to drive, an hour and a half to do 10 minutes. I was
right.
like,
Yeah. I've been saying no a lot to a lot of gigs like that because luckily I'm working. So
right.
if I get a call within 3 days before a gig, even if I'm running on empty, I say no because, and then they end up getting a crappy comic and then they'll know better next time to give me a call with plenty of advance. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's different now too, because back then, like 3 years ago, we were so desperate to be back on stage again because we weren't getting as much time as we used to. So
it's funny. All the memories are coming up in my Facebook, and there's like from 3 years ago, and I did a gig. I don't even know if you were on it, but I had a gig March 15th, the day everything closed down in the country from COVID, and I still had a gig that night. And I went, and there was like 6 people, and the people who booked it, they're like, "Oh, I guess everybody's afraid to go out."
Was that in Florida or was it in?
Yeah, no, it was here in Florida.
Oh,
yeah. And I'm like, yeah, except for the comic who wants to get paid. Everybody else is afraid to go out.
No, I was in Chicago, and that was when we didn't know what it was, and all of a sudden, like, people were like freaking out, but I was like, what is it? It's going to be a couple weeks. And then, whatever.
And there was a woman at the gig. So one of the people, it was a fundraiser of some sort. And she was just coughing and coughing and coughing. and she kept saying, but I don't have it. But I don't have it.
Right. Yeah. I remember those days.
Well, you stay on the other side of the room and I'm going to do my set and get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And that was the last gig. Then the next day, every text and every phone call was someone canceling a gig because I was booked solid. And it was like my Black Thursday that I was afraid to answer the phone because it was just like cancellation. Yeah.
I remember that too. Like I had a festival thing booking and I was like, oh, this is going to be the best month ever. Like I was like trying to figure out how I had 2 shows. I was like, man, I got to figure out how I can get from there to there. And then all of a sudden it didn't matter. I was like,
no, at all.
And then I went to Florida and like 2 months later, and that's where we all met. I wasn't there till like, I think later that month. Actually, no, you know what happened is I had a show cancel in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest.
Right. I remember you telling me that.
And then I got booked. McCurdy's was like, you can work this weekend. I'm like, perfect. So I flew to Florida. And as I was flying to Florida, I get a text like, hey, the show's canceled. Don't come out here. I'm like, well, everything's canceled. I might as well go see my family. And then I remember
McCurdy's had about a dozen false starts. I know so many guys that were booked and canceled and booked and canceled. Off the Hook opened for 2 weeks. And I went down and worked. And then there was something else. And they said, no, we have to close again because half the staff got sick.
Right. I think I got COVID the first time at Off the Hook. Not from either from the staff or somebody there. Because I remember back then I was like super safe. And I was like, well, and whatever. Anyway, this isn't the COVID only podcast.
It isn't.
but you, so what's funny about you, RC, and we've talked about this on the podcast recently with other guests, is you have this history of being a great comedian. You did warm up for The Chew and The View for years. Everyone knows who you are. You do a lot of stuff, but you're also one of those comedians that never talks about anything personal on stage, right?
Ever.
So no one knows anything that's going on in your life unless you follow you on Facebook. And even then it's like you get like bits and pieces of shit. You're like, okay, wait, so he's married? Wait, now he's not married. It's like, what the fuck? Whereas I'm like, all my shit's out there on stage. I talk very personally about myself. So people like know everything. And then you take it another level where, some people have jokes set up. You still don't know about them. But you're not just not doing that, but you're just doing crowd work and just
So it's all about the audience always. So no one ever knows. Here's a great example. When I was my wife, now my ex-wife, we met 14 or 15 years ago, and she already had 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And one thing led to another, and we ended up having a relationship, and they moved to New York to live with me. And at the time I was working on the Rachel Ray show. So I'm doing warm up one day, and someone in the audience, I said, do you have any kids? And someone said, oh, I have a 5-year-old. And I was like, oh yeah, my son is 5. and the crew just froze. Everybody stopped, and they were like, "You have a kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have 2 of them." And everybody's like, "What the hell?" They'd been working with me for 6 years on this show.
I mean, I've worked with you.
People were stunned.
Yeah, like I've worked with you for years too. And I didn't know anything that was going on in your life. And then all of a sudden, I see on Facebook that you're like, "You're divorced," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" I didn't even know. I didn't even know you were married. I didn't know anything about you. Yeah,
it's great because and I kind of like the mysteriousness of it. Okay. You know, because I've always felt that private life is private life, and I like having a whole separate life. So when I come home, it's not about comedy, and I've never thought that the two should intertwine. And I know there's comics that make a whole living talking about their wife and kids and relationships and stuff like that. But as far as I'm concerned, I kind of like being old showbiz that way. And, you know, because if you think back, the old comics, they would talk about their wife, but they wouldn't go into detail. My wife, she's so fat or whatever.
Right. It's very general.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of like keeping them separate.
Okay. Fair enough. And also you don't have to mine for material like, oh, this is going to be a bit, because it's like it's not part of your story.
When we started dating, my girlfriend, soon to be wife, made it very clear that she didn't want me talking about her on stage. Okay. You know, which was fine. I respected that completely. And then with the kids as well, especially with the internet. I mean, I've always thought the internet is a cesspool, and I didn't want the kids ever. I've never posted one picture of the kids ever. I don't think I've even mentioned them on social media. No. So people kind of know that I do, and every now and then someone who knows me will be like, "Oh, how's your family?" And of course, people are like, "Family?
What does that entail?" Right?
You have a family? I'm like, "Yes, I have a family."
I mean, that's a good thing too, because you keep it separate. I get that. So now what happened? You were married. How old were you when you got married, or what? Tell us.
I was actually. We got married. Well, we were together for 14 years and married for 7. Okay. So so I had instant family just like that. That's you know, when her and the kids moved in, which was great, and I was totally ready for it. I accepted it and I threw myself in, and it was great. And then we moved down to Florida. It'll be 5 years in July, as a matter of fact, that I've lived down here in Florida. So about a year ago, there was some infidelity involved, not on my part, and I asked her to move out. So, and yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with marriage. It's like, and you said 7 years, so like you hit it on the rail. Like that's when shit hits the fan in all marriages, which is why I'm like, I don't understand the institution of marriage. So let me ask you this. Before you were with your ex for 14 years, or soon to be ex, 14 years, what's the longest relationship you had before that?
Probably a bunch of 2-year relationships.
Sounds like me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
but also too, that was the time before I met her. I was Mr. Comedy, you know, and you know, when you finally get a foothold in the business, you become obsessed with it.
Right.
And so I started headlining all over the place. And then I got into doing warm up for TV. So I was doing that 3 or 4 days a week and then doing my gigs on weekends. And I was just obsessed with it because I just wanted to work, money. And I was a road guy as well. I worked some clubs in New York City, but I was a road guy. So I would be home during the week doing the TV stuff. And then I'd be gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back Sunday. The only day I ever really had off was Monday. So a couple women that I dated actually worked in TV, so they got it. They understood my schedule. Sure. But then a couple of the other women that I dated had no idea what dating a working comic entails at all. It
sounds like it'll be great at first. The mystique of it's always great up top. They're like, oh, dating a comedian, but then you're like, oh, I'm dating a comedian.
Right.
Like, it's
not. You know what I compare it to? Everybody thinks it's going to be that scene from Goodfellas when they show up at the Copa and they go down in the basement and through the kitchen. Yeah. And everybody's saying, hey, how are you? And they set the table up right at ringside and stuff like that. Everybody thinks that's what it's going to be, you know, but they don't realize the shitty places where we have to stay and
comedy condo.
It's terrible. Yeah. And, they think it's all Caesar's Palace and the penthouse suite, but it's never that.
And the
ever.
emotional baggage too. Like, we have highs and we have highs, and then we have lows and we have lows. It's like,
absolutely,
there's no other career I can think of where you have so much for you, it's a little different because you're not talking about yourself. So if they didn't like your act, it's fine. But for someone like me, I'm talking about myself on stage, so they don't like my jokes. They just don't like me. Period. Like that's
right.
That's a very personal thing.
And also too, there's just a huge amount of exhaustion. We're just tired all the time. And especially when I was burning it at both ends, doing both the TV and the road stuff, I was just tired. As a matter of fact, the 6 weeks before we moved to Florida, I said, you know what, I'm going to work my ass off and make a lot of money. And my wife at the time, she's basically the one that packed up the whole house and everything, because I was gone for those 6 weeks, just trying to make as much money as I could for the move.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so by the time we got to Florida, I drove down here. So I worked for 6 weeks, and then we loaded up the car, with the kids and stuff, and drove down here. Right. And it was brutal. So it was absolutely brutal. But then I got down here, and I had some work, but nowhere near as much. Right. So I went from being the busiest man in New York City to not doing anything.
Right. Well, it didn't take you long for people. And that's what I tell people in Florida during the pandemic. Like, I was just down there visiting my family because everything was shut down. I'm like, I'll just go do guest spots everywhere. But sure as shit, you do a guest spot, and then like 2 seconds later, someone's out there like, okay, so when are you free? Like, there was
word of mouth is huge down here.
100%.
And that's what I had a manager up in New York City, and he was like, I could keep managing you while you're down in Florida. I'm like, I don't need you to. And people to this day, there's even comics out here, they're like, hey, how come you don't have a video or a press kit? I'm like, because I don't need it.
Right.
The minute you come off stage, there's 12 people asking you for a business card.
Well, you have something that's unique too, where, not a lot of people are doing what you're doing at your level. So it's like, people are like, oh, I could use this in so many private or corporate settings, because I'll get booked to do shows, and I have a corporate gig on Sunday. Like, so can you make fun of us for a while? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to do it for the whole hour. Whereas you're like, yeah, that's all I'm going to do.
That's all I'm going to do. Right. Yeah. I do a lot of private stuff. Right. I think I have 2 of them this week, as a matter of fact.
It makes sense. You're going to be busy.
Yeah, and we have the 55 plus communities down here, and they want a comic that's just going to make fun of them as well a lot of times.
Right.
So and it all snowballs. So I'm actually busier. Yeah. I'm busier now than I ever was in New York City as far as stand-up.
There's so much work in Florida now. Because of that, does that give you, now that you're single, are you how are you meeting people? Are you actively trying to get back in a relationship, or what's your position?
At first I thought I was going to, and I actually went on a couple of online dating sites, and it's like The Walking Dead. So, and the problem is that I'm 63, even though I don't look it.
No.
Yeah, I am.
Jesus
I know.
Christ.
Yeah. And so what I had to do was, when you're on the dating site, you have to put your age, and then it matches you up with women that are your age. And honest to God, they all look like my grandmother.
Yeah.
There's so many, not that they're not beautiful.
It's different. It's a different level of beauty.
Yeah, but and I remember I went out with this one woman, and we met for lunch, because it's always lunch. Yeah, because they're older, it's always lunch.
Sure. Well, also you're working at night too, so
right,
you can't go.
Yeah, and so she walked in, and honest to God, I thought I was having lunch with my mom, and just and she was even like a year or 2 younger than me, but she acted so old and just so boring, and it was terrible. And then at the end of the date, she's like, "You're very nice. Come here and give me a big hug." And I thought she was going to send me home with some lifesavers or something.
Oh, those old grandma mints.
Yeah, right. So,
that's a hard position to be in for you, because I know it, because they age us out when you're over 40 too. It does that. Right. So you're in a position where you might be better off just putting 53 and then being in the comments, be like, I'm actually 63, but come on, look at me.
Or maybe I just won't tell them my age.
Yeah.
They'll never have to know.
But you're in a position where, you have all these shows, and there are people down in Florida that Yeah, I mean, there's not an entertainment industry, but some people take care of themselves there in certain areas. But
yeah, I mean, no, and since then, so, but the funny thing is, there's such a difference between a 50-year-old and a 60-year-old.
Yes, 100%.
So a couple women that I went out with, they were a little bit younger, and those were okay. Women are willing to go out with someone who's 10 years older than them.
Sure.
So if I'm meeting a 50-year-old or a 53-year-old, it's like, oh, it's only a 10-year difference or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And then there's the occasional, 20-something that wants to go out with an older man because supposedly we have it together, and we know all about it.
Sugar babies, they're called.
Yeah. And it's like, baby, I'm just a working comic.
Yeah. I don't know what you've heard, but
but I'm not, what's the new hot guy now? Matt Rife. Yeah. I guess he's the flavor of the month these days.
Yeah, he's crushing it.
Yeah, and everybody's, and I just walked in today to my therapist, as a matter of fact, and the receptionist at the therapist was like, "Do you know Matt Rife?" I'm like, "No, I don't know Matt Rife." And she's like,
"It's so crazy how much he's blowing up." Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, he's coming to Florida. I want to get tickets." And I'm like, okay. And she said, and she's like, "Have you seen the videos?" And she's told her Paul, I'm like, I really don't need to see a video of it. Yeah. But thanks anyway.
We see them. We work. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the dating apps don't work. What about like in real life now? Have you thought about just mentioning the fact that you're recently single somewhere in your set so that people know they can come up?
Well, it's funny because since I've moved down here and I feel like I'm kind of removed from being the family man these days, I mention it a little bit, okay, and especially when we were going through the split and the breakup, sometimes shit would just come out on stage,
right?
Like a little angry.
Sure.
But it's also Florida, and especially if you're doing a 55+ community, everybody's divorced or has been divorced or has lost a spouse in some weird way. Yeah. So I talk about it a little bit.
Okay, good.
But not like, woe is me, oh, I need to meet a woman type thing. I'll just do like a little aside.
Have you had situations where people have come up to you after shows to like hang out with you and try to hook up with you now that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so,
how did it go?
There's this one woman who we've actually gone out a couple of times. So I met her at a gig and we've gone out a couple of times. So, but you think you're ready, and then all of a sudden you're like, ugh, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Well, it's different, right? The dating has changed so much since you were last single too. I mean, there's two levels of it have changed.
Well, it's funny because I used to come home after work and I'd say to my wife in New York City, I'd say, "Oh my God, this woman was flirting with me on the train." And she was like, "What happened?" I was like, I have no game anymore. I don't have any game. And that was the joke. But it's like, okay, well, I'm married anyway, so I don't really need
Doesn't
game.
matter, right?
But now I'm like, oh crap, I got to get game.
Yeah. It's gonna be hard.
So, yeah.
What are you? If you obviously you want someone that took care of themselves and looks younger than their age.
Absolutely.
Your age demo, or they happen to be 10 years younger than you. That works too. What are the other things that you're looking for if you did want to? Well, first of all, let me ask you this before we get into what you're looking for. Would you get married again, or are you done?
No, it's not going to happen.
I'll date an institution.
Right. It's not going to happen. And I'm also having a hard time. I meet some women that maybe are in their 40s, but they still have kids at home. And I'm like, okay, I'm not dealing with that either. So
you want women that have they don't want to get married and they don't have kids that they're taking care of.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, because that, I don't have time. I'm not going to play dad again or uncle or whatever.
It'll be a weird situation.
Whatever they want to call me, that's not going to happen.
Okay. So what are the things you're looking for? So you're not getting married. You don't want to get married again. So that opens a door. It gives a bigger net for you to pick.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm just kind of looking for someone just to hang out with, at this point, because I have more free time than I did when I was up in New York City. So, I mean, like this is a weird week because I'm working Tuesday through Saturday. But even on regular weeks, I'm only working most of the time like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I have the whole rest of the week. And in Florida, it doesn't really matter. There's no there's not really like Friday night is date night and Saturday night is date night. You know, everybody, especially in season when everybody's from all over the world is down here, there's something going on every night of the week. So you can ask anyone out to go out on a Monday and it's cool.
Sure. Yeah. And what's the typical first date then do you picture you doing? Would you just do a lunch?
Coffee or lunch usually, you know, or meeting for a drink somewhere with a possibility of it turning into dinner. So I'll pick a place that has a good bar where we can sit and have a couple of drinks. And then if we're hungry or if it's going well and we want to keep hanging out, then we can sit there and have dinner.
Yeah. And if it sucks, you got an easy out.
Exactly. So, well, you know, there's always I'm going to go do a guest spot at the comedy club.
Right.
Which always works.
Yeah. I always have that. I always meet on a night that I have a guest spot. So that if a spot that I have, I'm like, hey, we can meet at like 5. And then if it's going well, I'll invite them to come with me. I'm like, hey, I'll ask to go first so then we can go get dinner. But if it sucks, I'm like, hey, I gotta go. Yeah.
Right. No, I always say, well, no, I always say it's a private party, so you can't go.
You can't go. If they suck, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it is a private party. Yeah.
Right.
What So what are the things that you're looking for other than like hang out? Like so we got the age demo. Do you have a type? Like
blonde. I'm a big blonde.
You're fan. A blonde guy? Okay.
Yeah. Or a redhead even. Blondes or redheads.
That's my type too, actually. You know, that's funny.
Except reds, but it's true. Redheads are nuts, man. Yeah. Like a true red, but I kind of like that.
Well, we're nuts. Comedians are something's wrong with us.
Yeah. So I definitely need someone because I'm not necessarily high maintenance, but like as a performer, we're generally high maintenance to begin with anyway. Sure. You know, there's got to be some ego going on. And, you know, there's some ego stroking, I should say, has to be going on. And that was one of the things that when I was with my wife for 14 years, it got to the point of where, you know, I'd be getting ready for a gig and I'd be like, how do I look? And she'd be like, you look like you're going to work. You know, that's
and you were fine with that or no?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, good. So as long as my you know balls aren't hanging out or something, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
And in terms of like are there any like deal breakers for you, like if they don't like comedy or if they don't like Don Rickles, is that the end for you?
I think they have to have a sense of humor. I think they have to like comedy. So I think it's got to be someone who's probably an artist in their own right of some sort, whatever that is, whether they're a musician or a visual artist or something like that. Not a comic. I won't date comics.
Yeah, of course.
At all.
That's
especially.
Yeah, I can't do it.
And especially now because I've had such a level of success. I think that, you know, some of the younger comics think that even guys to that extent think that if they become friends with me, I'm going to make a phone call and somehow get them on, you know, a TV show up in New York, you know, and it's funny. Like, nope, that was a whole nother life, my friends.
I don't even, it's all new gatekeepers probably too. So
absolutely. Yeah. There's only one other guy that's still doing warm up that was doing warm up when I was up there. So, you know, I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people that still work in TV, but they're camera guys and producers and stuff like that. And someone called me a couple months ago, and one of the TV shows was looking for a warm-up guy just to fill in for a couple of weeks. And he just said, "I'm just testing the waters. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Nope."
Yeah.
That's a whole level of energy that I don't have anymore.
Yeah. It is a lot of, I do warm-up sometimes for some shows. And it's like you just have to psych yourself out so much to like be ready. And it's grueling too, you know.
And I did it for 20 years, you know, just day after day after day after day. And I remember the last show I did was an episode of Good Morning America, and when I literally did a mic drop, and I was like, "That's it.
I'm done.
I'm not doing it ever again."
Now you talked about artist type, which I agree. I think that's the way comedy adjacent, but not comedians or some musicians, something that's art in the arts is
even a stripper. You know, I've dated 2 or 3 strippers in my life.
Hell yeah.
You know, because we had the same hours. You know,
right.
And it's perfect.
Right.
You know.
But most of the time, I'll say artists tend to lean to the left politically too, and I know that you tend to lean the other direction. Is that
but
for you or no?
But they don't in Florida.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
They don't in Florida. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of really conservative gay people as well down here in Florida.
It's all different.
So that's the beauty of it, is that a lot of people down here tend to, lean a little bit to the right.
Is that a deal breaker though for you? Because like my parents are opposite. They're married for fucking 55 years, and they're
right,
far left, far right, and they made it work.
I think it's got to be a deal breaker now, because everything is just so black and white. Maybe 10 years ago, I mean, I certainly, when I worked in TV, I dated a couple of girls that were really far left, and they just used to refer to me as, "Oh, he's the Republican," but we never ever talked politics and stuff like that.
Right.
It's because you were allowed to have your own opinion, and you didn't. But now you have to fight for every opinion that you have, and everybody wants to know exactly what you're thinking, and so it's just easier if we all think the same way.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. Like, and people say that too. I go around I open for I go on tours with comedians who are Republicans, who are Democrats, and to me, like, and Letterman said it best on I think his show with Chappelle. He's like, if we all agree on everything, what's left? Like, there's nothing to learn. You can't learn anything. You have to be able to engage with people that are willing to talk about stuff. So
right. But the only problem is that these days, no one takes no for an answer when you're having a discussion about something, because it's all about, trying to one up them, because you have to have the last word in, especially if you're posting on social media. You can't just walk away. You have to have the last word. I showed them. And I think a lot of people think that's the way it is in real life too.
Yeah, then you won't. Yeah, and if you and that's an argument. Maybe you just don't want to take that into the personal relationship. So
right.
Makes sense.
I mean, I think it helps because even though I swing right, there's a lot of stuff where I'm more middle of the road or even more left. I mean, like all good people, have different opinions about different things, and I can see both sides of an issue. So I think that as long as they're not, a member of Antifa or, or wearing a pink pussy hat, I think I'll get along with them.
What if they're what if they're super far right? Is that going to be a problem for you too? Like if they're like,
yeah, I don't need to date Eva Braun either. So
yeah. What if they were at the Capitol and shot somebody?
Shooting someone isn't necessarily a deal breaker.
You are in Florida, right?
Exactly. Everybody's got concealed carry. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. So you said you dated strippers in Florida too, or
no, not down here. I dated a couple in New York, and I dated one in Vegas who lived in Vegas.
There you go.
So, and that's when, and it was great because it's when I had just started doing warm up, and I was making a shitload of money for the first time ever in my life. And I was working out at the Tropicana, and I met her. And so I would fly out there on weekends. I'd fly her to New York. She had money, so it was like this the amount of money I spent in that relationship was amazing. And she eventually moved to New York, and we lived together, and we hit about the 2-year mark. and that was it. Then it was done.
That's natural.
So,
yeah, well, man, I think that the more you talk about being single on stage, the more you're going to see, especially and I don't do this intentionally, but sometimes you'll be like, I talk about being single on stage because of this fucking podcast, but you sometimes be like, where are the single people at? And they start clapping. And then it's mentally, you're like, okay, now I got to make that hot girl laugh. Now I'm and I'm not going to go home with her, obviously, because I'm in fucking, I don't know, Lansing, Michigan. But
you know what move I haven't mastered yet? Because if I'm on stage and I see someone that I'm attracted to, I'll flirt and stuff like that, and I'll make jokes about show's over, I'm going home with her and stuff like that. But then after the show's over, I feel really awkward because I know everybody that was in the audience are looking to see if I go over and talk to her, So it's like, I haven't mastered that, ninja move yet of flirting on stage and letting her know that I'm serious about it off stage.
It goes back to being in high school or whatever you took to get your nerves back then. You just take a shot and just be like, so we doing this? You just you gotta be so cocky about it. Cause you exude, as comedians, especially you exude this confidence when you're on stage. It's like, you just gotta fucking,
you gotta jump in, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you can't not. They don't know we're Oz. Right. They don't know who the little man in the back that's creating all this like
right.
confidence.
Although you know what I do though? I'll talk to them after the show a lot of times and I'll say, hey, I'm on Facebook. Make sure you friend me. And then if I see that they friended me, then I'll send them a message. And that and I ended up going with this one woman once.
Yeah.
But once was enough.
But if they're lean to the right conservative, they might just say, I don't have social media. Then what do you do?
Right.
You got to be like, fuck, give me your number. Just fucking.
Well, I have plenty of business cards that I pass out.
Oh, there you go. That's
yeah.
Is your number on there? Your phone number on there?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what you got to do.
So I'm like, here, and I'll say, hey, give me a call. We should hang out sometime.
Well, that's, dude.
It's kind of vague.
Hey, man. Well, next time we're doing a show together, we'll both be the old single guys at the show. We'll just be like, I'll be the wingman, and it'll be like a grandma and a mom.
But then everybody would be like, "Oh, you two are straight? We thought you were a couple."
Yeah, with our good hair. Yeah,
they'll be like, we thought you guys worked together all the time because you were a couple.
Yeah, and I have like a bright yellow car, and you have like a convertible. Like,
right.
Just be like, all right, bye guys. Like,
no, we look like we live in Key West.
Yeah. They probably think that, but that's good. That gives us the pheromones of being like, oh, they convert them. I don't know.
Right.
Well,
now I have to book a gig together. We'll call it the Wingman Tour, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, dude, we'll do it. I'm sure. I'm in Florida once a month now, checking on my dad. So I'm sure we'll be doing a show soon. And now that you're single, I'll give you some of my moves being single for all these years. So,
I can't wait to see how well they work.
You're gonna be like, who's this idiot? I don't have game.
You're right. Yeah, so I have to say I'm a Middle Eastern lawyer. Is that what I have to say from now on?
All. I just make sure to bring that up as much on stage.
Yeah, but everybody probably thinks like, wow, you're a lawyer and you're a comic. You must be a millionaire. I'm sure they think that.
And then they see the check that we're getting. It's like 3 tickets.
Right. It's funny. Do you know Chad Zumach? Do you know Chad?
Sure.
At some point in every show that he does, he always says, "Listen, I'm hot shit. I am making $125 tonight."
Yeah. Yeah.
Every show, I laugh so loud every time he says that. And then I always say, "You're not that far off."
Yeah. And then, or it's like, I've got tens of thousands of dollars from comedy. Like,
right.
I've made tens of thousands of dollars from comedy.
Right.
We're out of time. RC, where can people find out more about you and your upcoming shows?
Just on Facebook, RC Smith Comedy on Facebook, and I list all my stuff. And I have a few things coming up. I'm doing like a gig up in Georgia, but I pretty much stay in Florida all the time because there's work here. And honest to God, 3 or 4 gigs. Like the gig I'm doing tonight is 5 minutes away from my house.
Yeah,
it's just, and when I think back about how living in New York City, I'd have to leave at 3:00 in the afternoon to get to an 8:00 gig up in Connecticut because traffic was so bad. Down here now, if I can be home by 9, I'm thrilled.
There you go. That's the life. I get it.
It is.
Well, thanks, RC. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. Thank you all for listening to another edition of Singles Only Podcast.
So we've been doing this podcast, 6-7 years now? And the one thing you know about me is that I was a lawyer. It's one of the cardinal things associated with me behind being a comedian, former musician, or failed musician, or Persian, or old. But when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro, and you should do the same too. 312-648-8800. Scott Shapiro has been representing people for 25 years with workers' comp cases, personal injury, and entertainment law. Scott is a full-service law firm, and in addition to all the injuries that I talked about, work injuries, personal injury, and entertainment law, he handles other matters too. So you can hit him up, 312-648-8800, or check out his website, scottshapirolegal.com. Or email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You will not be disappointed.